Hello everyone, today I'm going to introduce you to a new technique in Gravit Designer and Illustrator called the live trace method. In this, you're going to be using simple silhouettes like you can see on my screen to use as a live trace, and then you can actually go on top of those images once they're turned into a vector style image and draw any details that you want to add in. What you don't want to use this method for is actual photos unless you really plan on going in and editing all the little details to make them look hand-drawn again. And those photos should be your own photos, and they should be copyright-free photos. Never, ever, ever take a photo right off of Google, live trace it, and call it your own. That is copyright infringement. So something like a simple silhouette, like you can see on my page here, of a cardinal. This was a copyright-free image anyways. I'm going to turn into a vector image using one easy step on Gravit Designer, and then I can go through and draw on top of it. As an example, to see what you should not do, here's an example of an image that was live traced. You can definitely see those harsh edges, they're really bumpy, and then this is an example of what you could do to draw on top of it as long as it's a copyright-free image or your own. Alright, let's go ahead and look at this cardinal and turn it into a vector image in just a couple clicks. So right now I have the cardinal selected, and I'm going to go up to Modify, and down to Path, and over to Vectorize Image. So Modify, Path, Vectorize Image, and you can see it automatically turns it into this vector image, and I'm going to be able to click and modify the bird. Transparent, this new little layer that it created for you, is actually the background image, so that white that was around the space of the bird in the image. I can actually just go ahead and hide the visibility on that so it's kind of gone. That way I don't have to worry about it in the space. So I'm just going to adjust this bird. If you want to change any of the outlines, you can always go to your sub-select or direct selection tool in Illustrator and move any of those anchor points by clicking and dragging or using your arrow keys on your keyboard to move them around and customize that image to the point that you want it to be. And then also you can of course change the fill color. So if you have an image that you want to use, you can use your eyedropper and grab from that, or use your color palette. So in my example here, I did find a sample of a cardinal that I can bring right into that space and use to draw from. Or I can use it to grab colors. So going back to my path here, if I grab my eyedropper tool, I can select that exact red from the cardinal so I get the realistic look. Well, just leaving it as a silhouette typically is not going to be your final point. You're going to lock this layer, make a new layer above it, and then I can start drawing the details. So looking at this actual cardinal or looking up other vector versions. So if I looked up vector cardinal, you're going to see a lot of ways other artists have drawn it before to get some ideas. I can go back with my pen tool and start drawing on top of this. So one thing that I definitely wanted to add was the detail that goes around his beak. So looking at that actual cardinal picture, I can see exactly where these lines go. Okay, connect back to that starting point, and I can then turn off my stroke and change that fill color again, either from the actual photo or find a color in the color picker. And at this point I have the option to either lock this layer and make a new layer above or keep working on the same layer. Depending on what you're doing, you can work on the same layer, but you can always stack them up as much as you need to. And remember at any point too, if you end up working on the same layer and you draw something that needs to be rearranged in the space, maybe you drew something that needs to be on top of something else. So for example, if this piece of the eye I wanted to bring forward on top of the second piece I just added in, you can go up to modify and to arrange, and then over to either bring to front, bring forward, send to backward, or send to back, where it's going to rearrange those items on that same layer. So if you do end up not making a brand new layer on top, you can always use that option. It just becomes very chaotic if you end up with too many pieces on that same layer. So I would continue to go through this space and draw each part of the cardinal to make it my own. When I'm completely done with my drawing here, I want to make sure that all of my layers are unlocked again. And in order to group the cardinal together, I would just swipe over the top of everything, right click, and I can go to group selection. The other option is going up to modify and also down to group selection. Now I can drag and drop this onto another document. I can move it around my space so I don't have to worry about it as all individual pieces. All right, let's go ahead and look at this same process using Illustrator. I have the same bird opened up here. So using Illustrator, I'm going to go over to my Properties menu on the right-hand side. Now, if that menu isn't open for whatever reason, you can always go to Window and open up Properties manually. You should see the little check mark if it is open. And as long as you click on your image, you should see the option to Image Trace. That's what we're looking for. So if I go to Image Trace, you're going to see a few options. Default, which is what we're going to use for a simple silhouette item like this. If you were going to live trace an actual photo, you can go to 3, 6, or 16 colors to get more of those different color values in the space. You really don't want to go too far though with those. Again, it's really important that your image does not look like you live traced it. You want it to actually look like a real drawing. So please make sure that you're choosing a simple enough amount of colors that it's feasible to go in and make all those edges smooth instead of those bumpy edges that you'll end up with the image tracing. So going to default, you can see that I image traced it. It's that same vector style image that you just saw in Gravit Designer. There's 2 extra steps that you're going to do in Illustrator to make sure that this is able to be edited. So go to Expand in the bottom right hand corner and then click on Ungroup. That's going to ungroup both of your pieces. Unlike Gravit Designer, the background piece is still there. It's not invisible like Gravit Designer does for you. So I can drag this off. You can see that whole space is still there. So I'm just going to hit Delete or Backspace on my keyboard to get rid of that piece, so I'm only left with the cardinal. And just like before, I could use my eyedropper and grab a color, or I can grab from my color palette down here and choose the color that I want. But notice that in Illustrator, it's going to automatically be on grayscale after you live traced. So in order to fix this problem, you're going to go up to Window and open up your color palette. And on this menu here, you're going to click on the top right-hand corner where you see the 3 little lines and make sure it's set from grayscale down to RGB color mode. That's going to turn it back into a color image versus black and white grayscale. All right, and then the same process that we did before, I would lock that layer just so I'm not moving it around, make another layer above it, and I can start drawing in those shapes. So just like we did in Gravit Designer, adding in those little details. Okay, and once I had everything that I wanted to drawn on top of this image, stacking them in layers, I want to make sure I unlock all of the layers again, use my regular selection tool or gray arrow key, grab everything, and just like Gravit Designer, you can right click and go to Group, or you can also go to Object up at the top and down to Group to be able to merge those all as one piece. Notice Illustrator, just like Gravit Designer, puts it all on one layer, so it simplifies that a lot for you. You can delete any of the layers that you didn't need anymore, all the blank layers that are left from any of the pieces that you made. And now I can save this as an individual image, drag it onto another image, copy and paste it, and use it in the rest of my design. So just to quickly recap what we did today, we learned how to take a simple image, like a silhouette style image, bring it into either Gravit Designer or an Illustrator, and turn it into a vector style silhouette. Using the program, you can change the color and draw all of the details that you want on top of it, giving you that base to start from. We also talked about when it's not acceptable to use an image and vectorize it. For example, finding a picture off the internet. If you do take your own picture and you want to use this effect, again, just make sure you really go into it and work into the details to make sure that you don't see any of those remnants of bumpy edges so it looks like a vector that was just done in Illustrator or Gravit.